Xmas, yeah. The
Arrange
music
those
was
cinema.
fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for, in our younger days.
It's been a while, 53 years.
Yeah. So I never knew this history, but so did the band break up a couple years after that?
Break up?
Or did you continue through into the 70s?
They're continuing. They've gone through over 150 musicians.
Okay.
I didn't follow them. I was one of the first people to leave.
Okay.
Yeah, in 71 I left. And,
Okay.
then the other arranger left shortly after Dick Callaghan. They go down Gambler.
Yeah, yeah. But I guess I didn't know the history, but I guess the point of the film
They
was
didn't have
that-
any hits after,
Yeah, yeah.
after the arrangers left.
Yeah,
They might have better musicians, but you know, later on, but you need hits, you need the right arrangements and the right songs.
right.
They didn't have that.
Yeah.
I didn't really listen to them. I was in, move on with your life, you know?
Yeah.
Did you, what was your gig after the Blood Sweat?
Say again?
What was your gig after, what did you do after Blood Sweat and Tears? Did you?
In the last 50 years.
Yeah.
Got married twice. Still married 37 years. My
Good, good.
Japanese sweetheart.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've been teaching at Berkeley. I just retired 3 years ago.
Okay.
After 36 years. I had
Okay.
enough of that.
Fantastic,
I
yeah.
was teaching, you know, all kinds of different subjects.
Yeah.
And some rough times, because I was kind of a shy person first half of my life, so I didn't take advantage of things,
Yeah.
you know? So I'm not that kind of person, but
Yeah.
now I would not take advantage of people, just take advantage
Sure.
of it's an opportunity to sell my book in CD, which I just did, because of this thing. And we have some other theaters where, like I performed yesterday with Trio. Thank you.
That's all yours, so.
It's online.
Yeah.
Is this a solo CD?
Keep the money. It's not about the money. It's just about sharing
Yeah.
Is it
the
solo?
music and what's in the book. This is a book about the purpose of life, from my point of view, giving and receiving love. It's like a children's book, but it's talks about some. I drew the pictures too. I've done about 7,000 digital art pictures. My dad was an artist, a frustrated artist, you know, but he was always drawing. So I'm the middle kid, so I always saw the creativity. So I probably picked up some of that from him, and I just started drawing, but just for fun. But I have like 7,000 or 8,000 pictures in the last 18 years. So I used some pictures here, and I wrote this book in about a week after I retired. And I go, wow, I'm writing a book. I thought it was for kids, but it's for everybody. It's about lessons about love that a lot of us.
That's it?
Sure.
How much were you, I've known John Chinesel for 50 years. We went to
You've
college.
known him?
Yes, with college.
I just
together.
spoke to him today. I said you just did a great movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think this is his best film. He's done a lot of movies.
His best?
Yeah.
Well, the distributor who I'm friendly with, he's 70 years old, this guy, Tom, I'm forgetting the last name, Hassel, Hassell.
Right, right.
Interesting name.
When you were in the band, were you aware of all this stuff with the,
No.
the tapes and they weren't there and the other guy making the movie or all of that? Were you aware of
Well,
any
some of it, I mean, you're talking about the whole thing. So
Right.
most of us didn't know what was going on.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know, probably like most of the people, that David needed the green card. Or was we going to lose our singer? The whole band would have broken up.
Right.
Who's going to replace David Clayton Thomas?
Right.
To me, he was the greatest pop singer. I mean, I love McCartney and
Right.
Stevie Wonder and Stevie
Right.
Wonder. But he was just, to me, he was like a chameleon. He could sing anything. I was just saying to my friend that I thought he could, well, you know, he'd sing like the tunes that Sinatra sang and Tony Bennett.
Right.
Some of the rock people do that, but I think David would do a better job
Mhm.
because he just had, I can't, you know, it's just personal. You know, some people didn't even like him, so what can I say, you know? Some people don't like the way I play. You know, it's real. You know, I tell my wife, I was doing a showing some years ago in art. I signed with some lady, and I was one of the 2 of 14 people doing digital art. It was just for fun, you know? And so I was in this beautiful furniture store. My wife is checking out the furniture. It's all $2,000, $3,000. She's sitting in it and she's going like this. She's very sweet, but I was laughing because you know, it looks good and it's a ritzy place. But I had my own showing of about 14 pictures. So what they did there, the few showings I had in Boston area, furniture shops, a couple restaurants, not art galleries. It's different these days, unless you're really well known. And,
How did you decide to do, I know you did a lot of Laura Nero covers and,
Bobby
the band
Colomby
did-
and Steve Katz were very good. They became producers.
Uh-huh.
We allowed Bobby. There was a lot of freedom in the band.
Mhm.
So,
Smiling Faces was done by Traffic, if I remember correct.
yeah, Stevie
Yeah.
Winwood was a big influence. I remember
Right.
seeing him with Al Cooper when I first joined the band.
Yeah.
We watched him in New York City.
Yeah.
He was young,
Right.
but he's very talented. I mean, I love the way we did Smiling Faces.
Yeah, definitely.
He sounds great, but we had a whole other arrangement. I think I wrote part of it, and Dick Callaghan came in and did a great job. But originally, Al Cooper, I mentioned yesterday in the interview when I was talking, because he's shown a little bit, you see his voice. But, I mean, without Al, probably wouldn't have been a band, because he got the connection with Clive Davis, who you've seen. He came out into this room. I was alone with Al after he had a meeting with the band. Some of the people were there. I didn't know anything about it. And he says, I'm leaving. And we used to write arrangements together. I do 10, 15%, sit on the piano with him. He was playing. And he didn't have the ability, I guess, to write music. So I would say, Al, you just play something really nice. That E minor chord, whatever, you know, that would be good for the horns, you know, I think. And he said, what? And I said, you know. And so I was kind of like a schlepper, an apprentice with him. And but I was very dedicated. I was mostly a jazz musician. But Al had influence too when we were 16 or 15. I think we were probably sitting next to each other, about the same age, down in Birdland, hearing John Coltrane and all these great jazz players, Miles Davis. Because he told me he loved Maynard Ferguson. And Maynard Ferguson's band at that time was a big influence to me as an arranger. And, you know, so he had a jazz instrument. I told Al last year, we've been communicating a lot. He lives in the area. And I said, I don't think you needed me. You were great the way. He said, no, I needed you. It was the blend. I was just filling in here and there. But when he left, I told my wife one day, I said, the first arrangement I did was Spinning Wheel on my own. I only studied a few months at Berklee College of Music when I was 18. I left to go on the road. So I'm self-taught. I'm a self-taught piano player. I don't use my fingerings. I can play fast. And saxophone is more serious. I studied with Stan Getz as teacher.
So you came up with that time signature then for Spinning Wheel?
Time signature?
That cool.
Yeah, that was me.
That was wow. Because that made it in my mind.
Well, for
It
you.
wasn't just that whole time signature sequence made it. That's what made it so cool. In my mind.
It's interesting you say that. You know, I like doing these kind of things because people
Wow.
say something, their own experience, and it brings out a memory that I wouldn't share. You know, maybe I'm bragging. It's not about me, but that ending originally. I don't want to look like I'm into needing money here. This is like I told some of my people. You know, for whatever it's worth to any of you, my book and my music, which I wasn't planning to do. You'll read why inside the liner notes if you buy it, why I did this. This just happened a month ago, and we got this bunch of copies made quickly. It usually takes 6 weeks. But the end of Spinning Wheel, my arrangement before we went into the studio was I was imagining the few fairs I've been in my life with my brother and sister, my aunt and uncle in Syracuse or wherever. Boom, 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 boom. You know, it's like a, you know, old chordy music that's been around for, you know. But it was a strange time. It's like boom, 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 a weird note
Right.
in the skip, and just repeating. So my idea for the ending was to keep repeating that, what I just sang to you,
Yeah.
and the drummer would take a drum solo, which you hear a little bit, but that's not featured that way. So after we recorded the horn section down at CBS, if I remember correctly, I'm 79, so I might be losing. And we went out for lunch or something. We came back, and the producer, Jim Gersio, who became Chicago's manager, we were considering him, but that didn't happen. And he was producing the album. And he and I think Bobby Colomby might have been involved a little bit. And he's not an arranger, but so I came back and they had come up with this, and no one knows where that came from. And I think I know where it came from if I'm in my right mind. I might not be, but one of the trumpet players, Chuck Winfield, who was the second trumpet player, he's very consistent, great guy. I think his wife was giving birth to their first son, or maybe their only kid. So Alan used to sub on the road or a concert. He played on spinning wheel, and whatever other tunes we played in the studio that day. Probably just 1 or 2 tunes a day. We didn't record all the tunes like jazz musicians. They do a whole album in 1 hour. The great players, Charlie Parker and all my heroes, 1 hour, and it's like, will I ever play this good? But they're playing every day, and they're the greatest players on the planet. We, like a lot of people, took, like God Bless the Child. This is not a normal thing. We had Gershio was saying, okay, take 86. That means you made mistakes and you have to keep it doing. We didn't have a computer in those days. You know what I mean? Where you can put it together and we all sound great. So I told Gershio, he's in the booth way over there in the glass room, this big room. I said, can you just say take 6? It feels really horrible to hear 84 like you can't play. It was supposed to be good music. But someone made a mistake, so you got to do it again. But the ending for that, so I came back and they did that and they put some recorders on it playing.
Right.
So it was very creative. I didn't complain as the arranger because the producer is really more in charge, I guess, over the arranger if they want to change it. But
Did you arrange sometimes in winter?
no, Dick Halladine did a beautiful arrangement on that.
That was my first breakup song. It's hard.
Yeah. So you should tell Steve Katz, And I was saying, it's good because as good as David sang, it was nice to have Steve, because he's very talented with what he did. Some people didn't really consider him a great player or anything, but I loved what he did because there was a simplicity in his playing. He wasn't a great soloist. He played a little bit, and for me, it was good, but not for 10 minutes, like some people that really were great improvisers. But I liked his voice. Actually, sometimes in winter, now I'm tooting my own horn, no pun intended. But I remember visiting him on Jane Street in the Village. Very friendly, and I was alone with him. He's sitting on the floor with his guitar playing. I come in, hi Freddie, and he starts playing me this new tune he wrote. And I said, that's really pretty, and he's like from folk and kind of stuff. And I'm not really into that, but it sounded, music is music. It sounded really good. So I said, that would really be good on the album, And I won't say who is in charge. There wasn't really a leader ever in the band, although Bobby had mentioned for a second that he was the leader. I don't remember that, but I don't care. It was a very short-lived thing anyway. And but whoever was picking the tunes or in charge, they nixed it for him when Steve wanted to do that, and they didn't care for it. And I think I spoke up. I don't usually do that. I was kind of not shy. I wasn't afraid of anybody in the band. I'm a shy person, but I spoke up. That's why it's on there.
Because it's so different from the rest of the album.
Yeah, it's beautiful. He did a beautiful arrangement.
It's lyrical, it's beautiful.
I'm an arranger that's self-taught. I went to Berkeley for a few months and I was on the road. So, like I said, with the spinning wheel thing, that happened one afternoon over at Bobby Columbia's house. So at the piano with Jim Gershio and Bobby in his apartment, his mother's apartment. And Gershio was kind of fiddling around, because I think he played guitar a little bit. And he played bump, 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 just, that rhythm. So I picked up on a little, it was just the same chord. There's nothing any piano player could play, But you pick up and maybe copy. I'm pretty creative, but still, I copy all my heroes. I play like Charlie Parker. I play like myself too, because I'm creative on some level. I don't want to compare. Some people just copy Charlie Parker. I say that's great, but who cares? He did it. And if I was just playing his licks, his phrases, he'd probably punch me and say, Fred, play your own stuff.